so we also want to be in a place where we then say to ourselves that we want to have regulation that is at least burdensome, to stakeholders in every sector. And so I welcome you very, very specially, and we hope that the conversations in this room will birth solutions that will deliver results in the fintech space. And so without taking too much of your time, I would like to welcome the managing partner of the firm, Mr. Ken Etting, to just deliver some welcome remarks. This is the time.
Hello, good morning. It's a big privilege to welcome very A-list guests into our premises this morning. But thank you for taking time off a very busy schedule, a very important schedule, to come here and underpins our understanding of the very serious conversations that need to be going on in this space. All right? And we want to be a trailblazer of sorts. We want to be the vanguard of shaping thought and helping to guide the interactions that this sector very well requires. And that's the underpinning consideration for this roundtable. As the topic speaks, we need to thrive in a very collaborative manner. I've been asked to give some remarks at this space. I don't know if I'm that qualified to speak to people that live this life day by day, but I would essentially just put to the table and to the house my understanding of this sector and what it is I think the sector needs, and we will use that as a basis for the conversation we hope to kickstart today. It's acclaimed and recognized that technology is a major disruptive element, and in so doing, in the financial space, technology has disrupted. It will continue to disrupt on a forward-going basis the interactions in the financial space. Our number, population-wise, is of keen interest to the world, right? Statistics tell me that in 2017, the FDIs into the fintech space was in the region of about $13.7 million. In the last 2 years, that number more than quadrupled, right? And that shows the keen interest in what the space can speak to and what the growth potentials are. And that's why we see significant investment, significant interactions, and significant activities in the space. Having said that, we recognize that any new area, as it germinates, as it takes strongholds in any society, requires regulation, it requires a definite framework. That framework needs to be certain, it needs to be pretty defined, it needs to be benchmarked according to international best practices for there to be needed investment and for there to be growth potential, right? We acknowledge as well that there are licensing challenges in this space, and in the fintech space, the financial services space, achieving or realizing its growth potential. The players, the regulators need to be on the same page. At least they need to be sailing in the same direction, and at least realizing that one needs to leverage the other for there to be certainty in the space. Those are the things the very intelligent people in the firm that practice in that space thought about as the basis of kickstarting the conversation with this roundtable. We have very distinguished speakers that will take us through the processes. The charter rules will apply here, and I encourage everybody to very freely and genuinely have good faith conversations that we won't solve all the problems today, but we can throw them up. We can at least identify them, and we can get some regulatory insight into how some of these challenges, hurdles, will be crossed in the very near future. I welcome everybody, and I wish you useful deliberation.
Thank you very much. I think I'm just going to welcome the Chief Digital Officer of Sterling Bank to just come in and give some opening comments. Thank you. Dr. Mr. Inka Oni. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. So I'm standing here representing my CEO. I think we're privileged to have been invited to give the opening remarks that will set the tone for this important conversation. And I call it important conversations because I know that it will be a series of other conversations we would have. Innovation, not only technology innovation generally, I think definitely push and progress the human race further anytime we think about it. So we think about the evolution from when we went through the industrial age to now that we're in the digital age. Every time those things happen, it definitely moves us further. The era where we are right now, the digital revolution, a lot of it is being pushed by not just operators like ourselves, but primarily by Fintech. I think it's unleashing a new level of progress to both the human race and economies. And I think definitely having this conversation is of importance. Why do we think we should be part of this conversation? In Sterling Bank, I think we differentiate ourselves over time by two things, really. We've differentiated ourselves being a very innovative organization, and I think some of the external validation awards may speak to this. The other point is that has also been very strong for us and important for us to differentiate about is our corporate governance and ethics. And as such, it means that very important to us is ensuring we embrace compliance and regulation. So I think the conversation we're having today for me, really at the end of it, is about how do we balance innovation with regulation. And the conversation we would be having would be how do we start to identify the blockers to innovation from regulation, and also being able to balance what is important to put as regulation to ensure that we do not run the car aground if we move without any form of regulation. There's that saying that says if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, you will go together. So I think that's the way I see the regulators. We collaborating with the regulators, we definitely will go further than just only fast, as it were. In our ethos of how we will also approach innovation, we also think that innovation should be an ecosystem play, and a lot of that is about partnership. And so it's driven the work we do about ensuring we're innovating and co-creating with fintech, as opposed to thinking that they've just come to eat our lunch. Of course, we are afraid that if we don't get serious, our lunch may be eaten, but we've recognized that partnerships is what ultimately will make us more successful. We think that in partnership, you actually enlarge the pie, as opposed to fishing within the same red ocean, as it were. We open up new frontiers, and that's what we've been trying to do with the partnership we are forging. We've also identified that it's not wise to want to just walk around the regulator. It's actually better to work with the regulators. So in innovating, we sometimes may be slowed down by wanting to do advocacy, engaging the regulators, explaining perspective to them, but we do find that it's actually more rewarding when we do carry them along and they're an advocate and they're championing it. And I think that the conversations we'll start having this morning may open up that way of how do we do advocacy better with the regulators, how do we co-create with them from the get-go and ensures that we expand the horizon for every one of us. I think the regulator at the end of the day is interested in customer or consumer protection. They're obviously interested in stability and safety of the financial services sector, and they're interested in growing the economy. If we are able to find a meeting point around this objective with the regulators, I think ultimately we will all be successful. Easier said, but I think that we'll have some hard conversations that would make the regulators obviously think about some of the stands they may have, to be flexible about some of those, and I've known that in time past they have been. And of course, when they need to hold strong, they've also held strong. And I think we would understand that the goals that they look at are beyond the entrepreneurial, capitalistic interest that we may have to embrace other things that may be social and broader economic goals and objectives. I do hope we have a good time having conversations and make it also engaging. And here are the rules that exist already so that we can be blunt, frank, and all that. So I hope we will have exciting conversations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also going to ask Dr. Babatunde Ogbonna, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Fintech Association of Nigeria, to also say something.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, so as Fintech Association of Nigeria, we are just actually an umpire. Now, tell you why we're an umpire. We're driven by 3 objectives. The first one is to connect, be able to bring everybody within the space together. We can network, share ideas. The second one is to accelerate. Either we like that, we innovate or we die. So we just have to champion innovation. The third one is advocate, being able to work with regulators so that there's progressive regulatory reforms to support the first 2 objectives. So we're unbiased umpire. So the financial system is as stable as the regulations that govern it. That is the reality. So there must be regulations. But the question is, what should be regulated? Fintechs, should they be regulated as banks, or should they be regulated based on what they do? The issue of licensing, fresh from school, I have a fantastic idea. Where do I get 100 million naira from? That's a big challenge. Should licensing fee be graduated and tied to turnover? I mean, we need to come up with, the regulators, I know they will initially say no, but these are things that we could build up. So if I go through a sandbox and it's good, then you see what I can do. Can we tie to turnover and my license is graduated and eventually pay over time? So there are things that we need to look at. How do we have regulation that supports the industry and still does not kill creativity? It's critical. So for us, as the association, we see ourselves as umpires. How do we work with everybody? Good operators, we call it regulators. So how do we work with everybody to ensure that the ecosystem thrives, the economy grows, consumers are protected, investors are protected, and we all make money? And I think that's really the general objective. So let me do a marketing call. If you are here, you're not a member of the association, it's important that you join us so that we can achieve this objective. Thank you.
Fantastic. And so I think for us as a firm, that's what we want. When we say that, we're not here today to give you legal advice. Maybe afterwards we'll give you legal advice. But today we're here to just, set out a platform where you have regulators and you have fintechs and you have traditional banks coming and talk basically to themselves. And we want this conversation to be as engaging as possible. I think we should hear from the regulators. And so in this regard, I'm going to ask the head of registration exchanges, market infrastructure and innovation department and Securities and Exchange Commission, Mr. Emomotimi Agama, to just speak to us for a very short time.
Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Emomotimi Agama. Just wanted to pronounce it properly. Beautiful name though. Of course, I can also tell you it means stay with me. Right. So I work for the SEC, and I have this very unfriendly task of having to deal with innovators, people that look very, very odd at most times, right? Yeah, you see them because as SEC staff, as a public servant, I have to dress like this always, and make sure my hair is low, and make sure, that kind of stuff. But for fintech guys, no, that's not the case. The story is, man, what are we thinking about? Right, just on the lighter side. Anyway, I'm happy to be here because I have also the unenviable task of interacting with fintechs that want to operate within the financial services system, specifically the capital market. And by so doing, I must tell them the rules, I must tell them what to do and what not to do. And I must also tell them that in telling them what to do and not what to do, there is an enforcement behind it. And I can get you to jail if you do what you ought not to do. And the essence is, what am I doing? I'm trying to protect somebody. Who is that person? That person that does not have anybody to protect him, or the investor. So, in operating within this space, are you thinking about the investor? Or your business is just there to pick up monies from people that don't have the money and get the system worse off than you met it? Rather than creating an enabling environment or creating a good society, you are creating catastrophe, breeding poverty as a result of some actions that we take in the process of the systems we do. So that's simply my business. But yet, there's another side of the coin. Do I want to stifle innovation? Do I want the teeming population that we have of youths not to find something to do where they find interesting? Or do I want to create an environment where everybody's welcome and we're all tutored to do the right things and create a good nature that's expected of us as human beings and as Nigerians? So, I'm friendly, but I'm also very stern. So, my business here today is to explain how we go about this stuff. And how do I encourage you to be part of it? And, to let you also know that I'm also your friend and brother. I'm not an adversary. So let's do this work together to create an environment, and an environment really, that all of us will be proud of, and we'll always be happy about it after the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll also ask Mr. Olubukola Akirame to also to also make some statements as well. He's the Assistant Director of Payment System Management Department of the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I bring greetings from Mr. Jim Owosaitoba, the Director of Payment System Management Department. And I want to thank Bango and Gudalo for organizing this event. I think it's very necessary that we engage, and it's good that we're having another platform to engage. Perhaps that's one of the areas where you may eventually hit some of us on the regulatory side that perhaps we don't engage as much as you would like us to engage. Now, innovation and regulation, they sound like two poles apart, right? But what we're trying to do now is to find a way to bring them closer. And in doing so, unfortunately, we on the regulatory side, we always find ourselves, most of the times, in a very uncomfortable corner, trying to explain why we do what we do. And I guess Mr. Adela has done a good job of that. Well, just to add to that, to say that you'll be in business if we are doing our job. And perhaps we'll be out of business when we choose not to do our job. Because if the environment is not safe for everybody to have confidence in it, then perhaps there will be no financial system for us all to participate in. So the essence of our work, whether it's licensing, whether it's bringing out policies and regulations to ensure that things work smoothly, is to ensure that Nigerians, in the first instance, have confidence in what we do. So long as we're able to collaborate and ensure that Nigerians are comfortable using the innovation that you bring on the table, then we're all achieving the same goal. So I would like to leave it at that and allow more interactive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, without wasting any more time, I think that this is the time where we now hear from the fintechs in the room. And the conversation is very clear with respect to licensing challenges that fintechs face in developing their businesses. And so I'm going to say specifically that BNI is a mediator here. So we're not going to be participating in those conversations at all. So I'm really hoping that those in the room today really are frank and really speak their minds to the regulator. And so I think I'd say that I don't know whether we have people in the room who want to speak specifically. Before this session, we put together a questionnaire and we sent it around, and just basically so that people can already speak to some of the issues that they're dealing with. I must just caution that in terms of the questions that will be asked, we're hoping that people don't just ask broad questions. Because sometimes when you ask broad questions, it's difficult for the regulators to specifically identify what you're asking. So please, I would say, I think what would be good would be for you to probably even talk from an experience perspective what you're doing, and so that people can actually identify with that, and the regulator can address the specific concerns. So I just leave it open to the room, and I'd say that if there's something that you want to speak to with respect to licensing challenges in your own sphere, the floor is open. Thank you. And please, when you speak, tell us your name and the company you work with and what area of fintech. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is I work with AO Payment Company. So we are currently undergoing licensing. We got our PSSP license this week, Monday, and I'm very grateful to the Payment Service Department. However, I think it's also been a roller coaster through the journey. First is the 100 million deposit. It's way too high for you to do business. And I do CBN 100 million. They are going to give me interest at Treasury bill rate 3%, 3.5. At the same time, I can take the 100 million, I'll show you evidence of that 100 million, and do business with it, get market share. But I have to wait for 1 year with CBN sitting on 100 million. I think that it makes the job more difficult because 100 million can get me running. It can get me running for 1 year, 2 years if I'm prudent. So it's a concern. Right now I've applied for about 2 licenses, so I have different kind of monies with CBN. At the same time, I now need to go raise money to run the business. I think it's a challenge that we must at some point meet midway to solve. We're also interested in mobile money. But when we heard the amount we're supposed to go deposit at CBN, 2 billion naira, we just stopped. Like it was literally, I'm being very honest, we just stopped. Was if I have 2 billion, I'll probably just do the business, go to other businesses, make my ROI, and forget about innovation. So, what is CBN? Is CBN willing to even look into that? I mean, I understand that you want us to show that we have the capacity and that we have the resources, but that resource sitting down with you, to be honest, is no value to me. Because my innovation is part-time. And the moment I wait for 1 year, for my money with you for 1 year, a competitor also has probably snapped up my developers, and I don't even have anybody to work with anymore. And it's the danger in the industry. Developers, people in the space, because if they work with you 1 2 years, they are very lucky. So not now when my money is sitting with CBN, I can't even pay them. They are always work for more than 2 months before they move. So what is CBN going to do about that? Also is the licensing process. Can we just, can we also look at how we can make it shorter? So the last one, we spent about 1 year on the journey, different emails, back and forth, appearances, and some of these things sometimes are things that could be placed in our pockets for us, or milestones at which we can do business. I'll tell you that at some point, nobody was willing to integrate with us anymore, even with an AIP. Because the question is, where is your license? The AIP had expired, and we didn't have an explanation to partners that, oh, we're waiting for CBN license. So business kind of goes on the low because you are still waiting for CBN. So I think that journey, well, how do we make it shorter? To what do we do about this deposit in escrow account that sits for 1 year, 2 years?
Thank you very much. I think I just spoke to Mr. Kimran and I was saying that maybe we hear from a bit more people in the room as opposed to addressing each question. I think specifically, we hear you. You've talked about cost of capitalization for the licenses, and then you also talked about.
So it's interesting that the fintech say you asked me for 100 million. I have a paid-up share capital, for example, 25 billion. I mandatorily have to keep CRR with CBN. And if I am trading FX, there are other things that I need to do. And sometimes the fear the traditional players would have is if you make the barrier of entry too low, then it erodes all the value that I have accumulated or created over the years. More so today where anyone really can do technology innovation. I don't need to build a data center. I don't need to buy servers. I probably just need some few people locked up in some place and they code. Traditional players probably have built data center and they're saddled with the OPEX of all of that. So I think the question for me really is, how do you make it fair and not erode all of what it is? I want people to come, but at the same time, how do you protect my investment? The person that invested in me could have invested in pure water.
I think the conversations around this room are going to be very, very interesting today. I think I must say, I mean, even though I've said that I'm going to really speak a lot, I must say that when we look at the fintech space, what we want to just sort of put out there is basically to say, yes, we know that there will always be that competition between the traditional banks and fintechs, but that we also want it to get to a place where it's not necessarily seen as competition, but as people working together to enable each other. And so I guess, I hope that the conversations in this room will go into that direction, and that the regulator itself will also have to be an umpire in this matter, as it were, to ensure that we get to that direction. Anybody? I think yes, okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Sheon Adesanya. I work with System Specs, the owner of Remita. I think for us to just put the discussion in the right way, we all need to first agree who exactly are the guys in the fintech space. I think that should be the starting point. Because Alert was developed by Wema, does it make Wema a fintech? Because Sterling is doing something that is probably empowering people who need quick access to loan, does it make them to be fintech? Like he was saying, of course, you already have the OPEX covered compared to a young guy that was in school that owns a platform called Smart Teller that digitized cooperative. Will you want to compete with such person or ask the person to also go for license? So I think the starting points in this house is for us to agree who are the guys within the fintech space. And don't also forget, what we have with CBN as we speak, there are no licensing for fintech. They are licensing for banks and financial service provider. So you taking a PSSP license, their own mind for the last 20 years has been defined that this license is meant for people in this category. So there is always a gap. And a fintech trying to take something bigger than him, not being able to meet up with the which we will come to it. But let's first have that discussion. Who exactly are the guys within the fintech space? Once we have that clear understanding, we can now start looking at how can the regulators help us to.
Just before we go, and I know you're going to speak, I guess, in putting that in perspective for Mr. Gama and Mr. Akinwumi, we would like to know what does who the regulator see as fintech? Maybe even within, yes, because clearly you raised a very big question, and Mr. will need to speak to that. Maybe it's important, and maybe that's part of the gap.
who does SEC see as fintech? Maybe that's part of the question we'll be asking. Who does the CBN see as fintech? And that's kind of help in probably addressing some of these issues. So we'll be looking to them to respond to that.
Right. Can I speak or is
anything like a fintech license? And the first question we asked was, what exactly do you want to do? And she said, I'm already doing it, I'm lending. That's what I'm doing, and that's why I need a fintech license. Okay, fine. This is Payment System Management Department, which she was at that moment. Created just about a little bit above a year ago, and meant to address fintech in the payment system space, and generally conceived even within the bank as responsible for fintechs, right? And she was right there looking for a fintech license. What do I then define as fintech? For us, immediately, we have to talk around the payment side. But when she said she was doing license, we know that lending, sorry. We know that, okay, someone else from a different department would have to speak with her. We directed our economy. Now, you would ask, in other clients, is there anything called fintech license as well? I was going through recently and I saw an article about US where it said that a lot of fintechs are snapping up what they call the industrial loan license. It wasn't meant for fintech originally, but they found it as suitable for their operation. And since they are doing consumer lending, retail lending, they are going that way. Similarly, your operation will define where you'll be placed, because there is nothing tagged as a fintech license as of moment. But where we have the tier license framework come out later, we might have something that you may refer to as such. We might. I always understand that because it's not yet out. Now, another thing we need to always have in mind is when we started out, say with mobile money, which you refer to as having 2 billion naira capital requirement today. The first mobile money regulatory framework has no capital requirements included. That was released in 2010, 2009 or 2010. It has no capital requirements. But having tested the waters with that, having seen how we are fared in that regard, we realized the need to introduce that after some years of allowing that to happen. The regulator allowed that space to enable some growth within that industry. So we are not always after stifling innovation by putting capital first. No, we've actually allowed people to play without capital for a period. But when you start to manage risk and you realize that things are crystallizing that requires that they are backed up with capital, then you start introducing it gradually. System specs, I'm not sure you started with a capital requirement with central bank. In fact, you were licensed as a PSSP much later, having been in industry for a while. That's to let us know where we're coming from. We did not jump at capital requirement. We started by encouraging innovation. Perhaps maybe those that are coming now are feeling the brunt because the capital requirement has kicked in. But those who started earlier didn't didn't have to meet that requirement in the first instance. Now you're making my life easier. Taking the risk. But we still have opportunities and people are still addressing the issue of capital in different ways. And that's why I always encourage partnership and collaboration. Again, one of the things we are contemplating in terms of policy, enabling environment, is to see the likelihood of extending what we have at on the intervention space in the bank to the fintech space. Some of us might have been taking advantage of this already. We have the agricultural small and medium enterprise investment. One of the items there says ICT. Fintechs, I believe, fall into that category. But I wonder how many fintech have made any effort towards getting that, or utilizing that opportunity. Perhaps those in the agri-tech sector or subsector would have been doing that. And that gives the opportunity to actually start with players already in the industry, as like banks, Sterling Bank and the rest of the room. I think I see GT Bank around as well, helping you to get the licensing done, get to play and succeed while doing this, and then gradually you develop, into your own organization. So those are options that we can use. And then lastly, the fact that you have to place that in escrow in the Central Bank of Nigeria. We recognize the fact that that might be quite a burden for you at the moment. But it is necessary because of the instances we have seen before now. I want to talk about exposures that banks have to payment service providers, for example, let alone other fintechs that we have seen. We've had occasions where billions of naira of the industry has been exposed, and if action had not been taken to ensure that those are managed, then the financial system perhaps will not have that confidence that we all have in it now for us to even try to play. So if we don't manage such risk, what we have done to ourselves is that we'll leave the financial system open to instability. And once we get to that point, nobody will have confidence in even doing any business with you. So to safeguard ourselves and to ensure that market that you are targeting remains there for you, it is necessary that those risk management efforts are made. Then Sterling Bank talked about balance. I think we're always in the middle anyway. And we strive as much as possible to create this balance by bringing everybody on board. And I think somebody also mentioned engagement. What are we doing to engage fintech? We need to improve on that, but one of the things that will be coming soon is what we call the Fintech Special Interest Working Group, which will soon kick off, which you have fintech have an opportunity to communicate their concerns to us within an environment where banks also can speak, and we can find a balance while not jeopardizing the financial system for the benefit of all. So that is coming on board. Again, we are supporting the FSI Innovation Sandbox, which was launched recently. That's another forum. I think they're having an event very soon. My director will also be there to speak against fintech. Aside that, I always like to emphasize the fact that our doors are very open. And I always use Pagatech as an example. I remember when Pagatech was going to start, somebody called in to the CBN desk and asked, I saw your regulatory framework on mobile payments, and I'm somewhere in the US and I'm thinking of coming to Nigeria to do something about it. And we started talking, and he came back and has done what he has to do. We are always willing to listen to anyone who is ready to engage with us. More of what we're going to do is now come to you, which we have to thank Bangla for allowing this forum, at least to exchange ideas around this. We take feedback, we'll see what we can do to enhance our processes. Then before I miss this, the process, the timing or the duration of licensing. Yes, I'll say maybe the best I've seen is 12 weeks. But in some cases, they are as long as, and I think you had one of the best experiences of many of other, because I know that you perhaps got yours in record time. I don't know how long it took you, the first one. Sorry? 1 year. But when I heard about it's less than a year. Because I know you may have, and that's another thing. you're calling, what do you want? You've come first, you put about 3 requests, or you put 1 request, and while you are still engaging on the first request, you've dropped in another 2. How do we clarify what you want? And that's one of the things that is very essential. For innovators, you have so many ideas that you want to put right there on the table. But you need to define what you want and be sure. So that when you start engaging with us, we can work together on that basis. But when you see, you come from this sphere and I'm discussing this with you, and then you suddenly bring another on the table, it will elongate the time. Because we need to appreciate what you're trying to do in order to know how to address you. Blue salt, I think I've, along the line, spoken around your concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Kelvin, sorry for putting you on the spot. I've had this issue around the minimum capital requirements. I think Ayokunle of the will asked questions around finding a win-win situation. I think a lot of, from our side, we do understand the systemic risk issues that some of these capital requirements are meant to address. But there's a point about value erosion. If I keep 100 million with CBN, that doesn't mean anything for a year. Is there a framework where the CBN could put this in? CBN-backed instrument, like treasury bills, and you put it there, and you secure it.
That's where it is. Currently, and
people don't know that.
Once it is placed with us, it's placed on in the Nigerian treasury bills, and you get interest paid over the period it is with us. Now, why do we have to do that? Like I said before, we didn't start that way. Good to see Jay. I'm not too sure when you first had your license, you did that. System specs, same thing. But experience have shown that we need to manage that aspect. And another thing is that the faster you respond to regulatory inquiries about what you want to do, the better for you. There are occasions where somebody submits an application for license, and basic issues around even due diligence on their promoters, they haven't done. And you ask that question, and it takes forever to get back. You're keeping your capital target down when you're doing that. As soon as we get responses, we try to get back to you. That is not to say that there may be no reason why we also might be at fault. And we do acknowledge that when there are occasions where there is a glitch or an undue delay on our part, and there will be reasons for that. Sometimes we collaborate with the other regulators in the industry in doing due diligence, for example. Perhaps that's one of the areas where we need to improve, where we come together, where we have, say, a sort of maybe regulatory passcode. If I'm fine with CBN on corporate governance, on due diligence, maybe that should be enough for SEC. Or if I've had that experience with SEC, and you're coming back to CBN and you say, oh, I've done something with SEC, SEC has cleared all my burden, and you can use that and say, okay, let me use that first. Perhaps that's one of the options we have to engage and collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay.
All right, just to speak on that point that you made now regarding regulatory collaboration and due diligence. One of the proposals we have from the SEC, which, fortunately I'm bringing out now at this forum, is that we're trying to set up what we call a regulatory hub. And that's the beauty of fintech technology. So what that will do is a situation where we have a common portal wherein, as regulators, we're able to feed that portal with information or requests. Because for us also it's a major challenge, right? You send a request to the Central Bank of Nigeria and it takes them almost forever to get back to you. Whereas the applicant is thinking that you are the one delaying whatever you're supposed to respond to. The same thing also applies to us CBN sends to us, and it takes forever because when the document comes, it doesn't go to the right person. It goes through processes and places, and before it finally gets or bats at the place it should get to, it has taken another 1 month. So that's what. Then the other point I want to make also is that in dealing with fintech, there's something that we must always try to differentiate. We must differentiate the function from a product. There are two different things. There's a function and there is a product. So these two things have different licensing procedures. So if you are not able to do that, then you run the risk of having delays. That's one. Then number two is the issue you spoke about, the packaging. Fintechs and institutions or organizations must endeavor to seek advice from lawyers or whoever to guide them in packaging. Because if you package your documentation properly, you are more likely to spend just about 25% of the time you will spend if you don't do that. So these are things that we should already put on the table.
Very much says. Let's hear from Dr. Obima then.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a follow-up. You mentioned Ask Me, and I think that's good to really understand how that works. Can it be used for capital? Because I know that you don't allow, when you do your verification, if the capital comes from debt, you rule it out. So what exactly is this? So if I don't have a license, why would a bank want to process Ask Me for me?
As much as I know about actions, licensing, I don't think is a requirement, only actions at the moment for a technology company. It's just the ICT. Now, whether the ICT should be focused on agriculture might be an issue, right? But that provision is there. However, we're hoping that we come up with another thing that may leverage that and that will be targeted at fintech specifically. And in that case, a license will not necessarily be a requirement. Even within the tiered licensing framework, some of the discussion we're having is there should be an avenue to have fintech sponsored by an already licensed institution. Now, if that materializes, and that's under discussion, it will give another opportunity to see more people come up and play within the space. But that will be under some form of guidance by an already licensed institution. And we've seen a lot of that happening already within the regulatory, within the sandbox, the private sandboxes of banks and other institutions. We've seen such happening already, where products are developed within that sandbox and eventually get to us. Perhaps the bank presenting itself to have approval for it, and we do the normal, we carry out our normal processes and get it approved as we deem fit.
Because yes, you may get the fund and qualify under that ages that you just mentioned, because ICT is already one of such. But in using it to pay for my license, or to actually approach to use it to pay for license, it looks like the regulator will still see it or deem it as a leverage fund and as such. Because if you do capital raising now, you'll find a situation when they're doing the audit, people will back out all of the ones that have come. Even when people get creative and go and do the loan in another bank, you have all of the information to be able to do that. You want fresh injection of funds, and you always insist on that.
Let me just do a follow-up. I deliberately asked that question, but I know that the answer is going to be no. But can we get creative about this? So I'm a fintech. I've started doing some transactions. I've applied for a license, so you have an idea of my turnover. I've put down 100 million naira. So can we say that based on the fact that I have some history or data on what you have done, you can go to Ask Me and take a percentage of the 100 million for your working capital. So your 100 million is still there, but you have a debt portion, which facilitates AXMIS to be faster. So maybe I can get 50 million from AXMIS, which enables me to start working. But CBN is saying that because you already have 100 million with us, and we know that you're turnover, and you cooperate your bank, we are like, give the bank, please, we can approve it. I mean, I think I'm looking for solutions. I mean, how we can make these things work so that we don't kill young businesses.
There is equity participation on that. If I'm correct, there is equity participation. It's not all about loan. There is equity participation, right? So if the bank is ready to be part of that fintech that it has sponsored all along, maybe within its within its sandbox, you can also utilize the equity participation. Of course, we wouldn't accept a loan fund as equity. Thank you.
Thank you.
The question has not been answered. There is an aspect of license which we know already exists. But you have not answered my question. Who exactly are the fintech guys? If we don't have the appropriate definition, we keep going around the cycle. We keep suffering trying to get a license that does not fit us in any way. And the honest truth is, I don't think there is an existing fintech license. I stand to be corrected.
I think sure, let me say that I think from what I hear from the regulator, there isn't a drive to have one fintech license, but more to regulate specific activities so that if you're providing a particular service, then you have a particular license for that service. And I guess maybe there might be issues that then arise from that, where you then have, instead of a question, are we having, should I say, duplicate licenses, are we over licensing, and all those types of things. So in terms of when you say who is a fintech company, I think that's clear in terms of what we say. And I mean, it's very clear that if you're providing financial, you're delivering technology through financial, oh, you're not, you're disagreeing. Okay, let me pass. And I said, I really shouldn't speak. Hold on.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Eyama, and I work with currently. I think he's right in the sense that there is a difference in understanding in the concept of fintech. And I think that the regulator is taking the position that if you're offering financial services using technology, then you're automatically fintech. And that automatically puts a lot of entities into one bucket. I think it's a discussion actually going on in the regulatory space. It's fintech started as traditional institutions providing financial services using technology. That's how we started. So we had banks who employed technology within their systems to now provide services to their existing customers. Now, the second phase, which I believe is the phase that people like us existing, is technology services that offer the technology providing financial services. So you have technology companies that offer financial services instead of traditional institutions implementing, using technology to provide financial services. I think there's a thick line. It's not a thin line. So you have examples of robo-advisory, for example. Where do you put the service like robo-advisory? It's hard to place that kind of service under the traditional fintech. So when you say, for example, that fintech is just financial and technology, that's very correct. But in the sense of the structure and the model, there are two different types of fintechs. And I think that he's referring, I think that we fall under that second category where you have technology companies providing financial services. I think that we need to clarify that from the position of regulation.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yes. Yes, the difference is that as we have seen in different clients is that regulators are taking different approaches with some of these services. So that, for example, we have seen that, as I said, if you're doing, say, a payment service, you might need to get the license to do that. But if you're creating, say, a robot advisory service, for example, right? How is regulators going to approach that? I do not believe that as of today there's currently a framework within the existing regulatory systems that provide support for this kind of service. As some other services, so for example, peer-to-peer funding for there is another argument on that too. But I think that that's a distinction that we need clarity from the regulator. Thank you.
Okay, just let me answer that question so that we can take it as they come, because there will be a flood. Robo-advisory is investment advisory service. Simple, using technology. And robo-advisory is recognized by the SEC as such. In fact, there is a regulation already existing regarding investment advisory service. What we have tried to do at the SEC is try to trickle the investment advisory services regulation to include technology in order that I register you. And that is coming out very, very soon, before the second quarter comes out. So that takes care of it. So whatever I did, the other one you're talking about, peer-to-peer lending. Yeah, peer-to-peer lending is crowdfunding, right? To some extent. But you see, peer-to-peer is individual. But when you talk about crowdfunding, crowdsourcing from outside, that's crowdfunding. Crowdfunding regulation will be out also by the next quarter. So we are running on all of this. Yeah. No.
Hello. Sorry, excuse me.
Yes.
Morning. My name is Bayo. I represent #Payment. Now, the issue we put on the table is something I noticed about 2 years ago, and I'm happy we're discussing this thing. I think, just like the other gentleman mentioned, there is a need to define all the several activities within the fintech space. Like I say, it's a jargon, fintech. I'll give you an example. My company approached the bank. Now, what do we do? We're aggregators. What we've just done is that, okay, as an entity, I walk up to the marketplace and I see a retailer and I say, one-on-one, do you know what I can enhance collections for you? So all I want to do is enhance collections for you. And I've partnered with several different stakeholders who have their regulatory licenses, but the technology solution is me. I put it down. Then I walk up to a bank to open a bank account. And the bank is asking me for my PSSP license. I said, I don't need one. I am not a PSSP. The contract is between I and, say, him. He's a supermarket. I just want to deploy a solution for him within the regulated environment. So why should you ask me for PSSP? I say, sorry, I can't open your bank account. So we should, I think this forum is a good forum to actually, you see, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just break it down to, like the CBN person says, what do you want to do? Then it's English, what you want to do. Then you see if it falls, where does it fall within? Because some of us that we say fintech, we really don't need a regulatory license. Because it depends on how you're deploying it. If you're deploying it through setting infrastructure, the person already has an NCC license. I'm not a telco, but nothing stops me from building my solution and selling it to whoever wants to buy. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to ask a question, and I think Mr. Adama will help in this area. I know you set up, thank you for setting up a committee for the blockchain technology side, and I really appreciate that. But you said when the bank started, the initial guys who took the risk to set up the financial system and regulate it, there was not a lot of limits. They weren't them paying $5 billion. It wasn't existing then. Now, what do you have for people trying to set up this blockchain technology in Nigeria? When it comes to cryptocurrency platforms, I have read the 72-page documentation released by SEC, which is beautiful. But my question is this. How fast will SEC go on this one? And how easy is it going to be on us? Because we don't want, the case of over-regulating it might actually affect what the blockchain technology is trying to achieve. So we're still looking at, because most of the blockchain side lenders or people offering service with the blockchain technology, they still say go get a CBN license. And we are startups, and we are trying to build an emerging technology. You know, we're already spending huge financial capital on getting developers because there's scarcity from the blockchain developers, and you still want us to go and do what the big guys in the fintech space. You know, they have a lot of finance coming to them now. So I'm trying to say, are we going to be put together with the fintech who already has huge funds coming from VCs, or are we going to still be giving the sandbox system where we could come in with our 10 million naira, 5 million naira, and still be able to be creative with this? So I would really like to clarify.
All right.
Hello, it's not really a question. No, I want to play the devil's advocate here. I think it's important that we separate the services from technology. What service are you trying to provide? Are you using technology to provide? And why do you want CBN to regulate that service? I mean, CBN regulates payment services. And if you're not doing anything in the payments sector or the financial sector, why do you want CBN to regulate your service? Because you are a fintech and necessarily think I need to approach CBN for a license. Why? Like, that is very good, because you mentioned something about investment and advisory. It's like Bao and Godalo choosing to use technology to provide investment advisory. Why would they need to approach a CBN? What has CBN got to do with investment advisory? So those are the kind of questions I feel like you need to ask yourself before you say, oh, I'm a fintech and I need a license from CBN. What service am I providing using technology? And what sort of license do I need for that service? And who is the best regulator to give me authorization for that service?
Can I just say, I've been trying to speak for a while. I think that, my name is Sam Buduma, I work with Tech Advance. We have quite a number of, we've actually started doing fintech before it was called fintech. And all of a sudden we started seeing a lot of reactions to what we were doing. We're like, oh my God, okay, this business is gone, that business is gone. And before we knew it, you know, we have quite a number of blockades. There is a reactive approach that I think is what I'm guessing we're trying to grapple with. Obviously, this is new technology, innovative, you know, things are moving very quick. Nothing has moved this fast since the beginning of time in terms of technology. And so we find a lot of square pegs and round holes, and we're trying to shape, you know, the squares. I don't know, I mean, I come from a telecoms background. And I remember the advent of GSM and how tough that was. I happen to have very direct relationships with, you know, the NCC, and I kind of, you know, noticed how it evolved. The one thing that I would say, and this is, you know, I don't know if it's a question or it was just like a comment, but maybe both. In response to the reactive approach, there's definitely a chasm between the practitioners, the operators in fintech and the regulators. And I think it's because there's this veiled approach. It's like, oh, hey guys, surprise, there's a new regulation. You know, in 2 months there's going to be regulation, just wait. You know, and it's like, you just wake up and see it. As much as this is very dramatic and exciting, sometimes, you know, it's very intriguing. It's like a nice movie, suspense, you don't know what's going to come out. But your investors are literally blindsided. And I think that for the most part, if there was a carry along, we're not saying, hey, we're going to give you the regulations. But if we can have a tete-a-tete, a multi-stakeholder forum, that is a constant conversation. Just as technology is evolving, the multi-stakeholder forum is evolving. Right now with the internet, there are several levels of internet governance across the world, you know, from international, you know, to West African, to Nigerian, so there's like NIGF, WNI, it's like several levels. And at each level, there is constant communication. So that forum, I believe, is, I mean, as much as Bao and Igodalo are trying to drive this, you know, collaborative forum between both, I think something needs to be defined and definite from the regulator's point of view to say, hey, we don't know everything, because you can't. You guys are innovating faster than we can keep up with, because we are. However, we need to bridge the gap so we protect our mutual target, which is the customer. I think that helps. I don't know if that is a consideration. I don't know.
So my name is Uchi. Uchi Okoro, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to speak more. So my name is Uchi Okoro, and I'm representing Quidax. I'm co-founder of Quidax, and my question is directed at Mr. Gama. You must have noticed I've been smiling at you like a sheep. That's because I realized that in future when there's regulations, you'll be the one that I should be smiling at. So we're a cryptocurrency exchange, and we make it easy for people and businesses to buy and sell cryptocurrency. Now, that gets everyone's attention, and the truth is, going from what Mr. Emeka said, the truth is we want regulations, because every now and then an investor is telling us, oh, yeah, so the regulatory climate in your market is not clear, so I don't think we want to touch that, right? And we know the working group had been set up, led by Mr. Jamal. And in the past, we tried to get some of our friends at CSCS and NSC to make an introduction to this group so we understand what's going on, because you can't regulate what you don't know about, right? But then that never happened. They never really responded to my emails. But here's what's happening. Right now, three countries are trying to get us to move our headquarters over to their country, right? So there's 2 in Europe and 1 in North America. Yesterday I was on a call with one of their regulators. See how easy it was, me that I'm in Nigerian, right? And I really don't want to move. But what's going to happen when I don't have capital to run my business and the regulators are saying we won't touch you because we don't know about your regulatory climate? Yeah, so clarity on regulations for cryptocurrency exchanges, and how we can get in on this conversation, piggybacking off what Mr. Susan said. Thank you.
Yeah, lastly, my name is Shayman. I work for a company called Trimo. And well, this is even not about a company. I just wanted to talk about specifically around fintech regulation. So very recently, I did sort of a mapping of the different players in the fintech sector. And essentially what I did was to allocate companies based on, first, the license that they owed. And I think one of the contention that I had was there were quite a number of companies who operate in multiple areas of the financial services space. So you see a company that starts out as, say, a payment company, but they realize they can actually give loans to their merchants, and they want to play in that space as well. And then the frustration then becomes, I have a PSSP license, now I want to do this. Do I go and get a finance house license or a microfinance bank license? Or it might even be you want to start doing investment, so do I now need to become an asset manager? You know, you said something about partnership, but then while partnership is feasible, the reality still remains that sometimes for the model you're trying to adopt, it makes sense for you to actually control the levers. And because in a lot of categories, we see that the level of depth in the market is not very deep. So you want to do other things very quickly, even as a startup. And that is where typically the frustration around, okay, this is what I set out to do, but again, I'm offering a service that covers different value chains. And now you're trying to put me in a box to say that, oh, you're a PSSP, oh no, you are a lender, or your partnership is a microfinance bank, so you can only do lending. But I'm thinking, yes, but no, because what I need to do, so for example, if I want to build a company like, say, Square in Nigeria, where it starts, from giving merchant solutions, to offering loans, to doing sort of agency bids, it's a full value chain. And that is a service. The value proposition for me is being able to offer that full value chain. So what license do I need to look out for? And I think that is where maybe there might actually be an argument for a specific fintech license that is sort of a pseudo bank license that allows you to do multiple things. How that is going to be structured is a bit complex, but there should be thoughts around that, because a lot of fintechs are actually moving in that direction, and I think a lot more would move in that direction just to strengthen the value proposition. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Sorry, let me just...
This question, that question, questions I've been asking.
Okay, so can I? Okay.
Yes, please.
Good morning. My name is Shay. I work with Jumia, which we have Jumia Pay. And I think mine is actually very specific. It's to CBN. Okay, so this is basically drawing from the discussion regarding capital requirements. Now, of course, you have maybe a situation where we've had investments coming from investors for a while. And of course, in applying, we've deposited the 100 million, that's for a PSP license, for instance. You've deposited the 100 million capital, but of course your books would show, so because investments are going and books are showing a negative shareholder balance. Now, because you have investors who are not in Nigeria and would rather keep the funds out of Nigeria until they are needed, and of course you have regulators basically say, okay, look, either you have more funds coming from your investors so that you have, at least on your books, a zero, should I say, either a positive balance, at least net of the negative balance. I'm wondering if the CBN can be more flexible in the sense of saying, okay, maybe if your investors can show, one, they have the funds, and two, they're making a commitment as at when due to send the funds down. I don't know if that would be sufficient, or they need to at least set, because of course foreign investors would rather have the funds sitting outside of the shore of Nigeria until the funds are actually needed, instead of just having the funds sitting in your books, especially when they've already made so much investment in the past.
Good morning. My name is Sarah with Kuraka as well. So my question is around requirement. So we all talked about the money, yeah. So in requirement, I would say who defines this requirement? When we come to partnerships, you go to a bank, you want to connect their disbursement APIs, connection APIs, they will ask you for AIP or PSS license, right? So if we're supposed to go into partnerships and we're still requested to get this license, how are we covering that, and who lists out those requirements to determine what you should do to get what you need to do where you are? Because as you rightly said, we are technology providers, so we just want to come in, provide necessary technology using existing licenses as well. So if you are not going to get the same license you have, come and do business with you, then I don't think we are going to actually be able to solve the problem of collaboration.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Kende, Olatero, Olagbegi, Result. I had two questions, so she already asked the first one. The second one I want to ask is, and it's for my organ CBN. And my colleague, I think, gave a very good description. We're beginning to see fintech involved into technology companies, but the bedrock is payments. So we see people doing hotels, or we see people doing logistics, but at the end of the day, the intersection is payments. Now, is CBN thinking like that? Because if you come and meet me, for example, I'm doing, okay, let's say for example, Airbnb now. Okay, case in point, Uber. Uber wants to start rolling out wallets. So can you say Uber is a fintech? Not really. They won't describe themselves as a fintech. But they are offering what? Services that has payments at the bedrock as infrastructure. Now, is CBN actively thinking about that? Because what we're beginning to see now is people offering services and having payment as infrastructure. So you can't put me in a box as a fintech. Because I'm just saying, and I'm thinking about the customer. Say, look, I'm giving you this service. I know you have challenges with payments. I'm doing payments as infrastructure. But my primary focus is servicing you in this area of business. So the CBN thinking about that in terms of regulation, because it will be somehow if you now box those companies as fintechs and now go into the primary fintechs like the other ones that we have in the system. So
sorry, can I just ask? Right, my own question is very simple. Like, why
Why is everything so complex in Nigeria? You have a company license. You have a registration certificate from CAC. You will print the certificate. It's like hell to get another copy. When you can just walk to a center, present the copy of the certificate you have and get another one. Everything in Nigeria just has to be complex. To get license is hellfire. To operate the business is a problem. I don't understand. Regulators are trying to push away the problem of running a company to the people that are supposed to be running the company. The problem of regulating the sector, the problem of enforcing the law to the people that are supposed to be running the company. Give the license now. And you give them the license, then police them. They're going to work well, let them do it well. They're not doing well, skip the thing and close down the company. Why does everything have to be difficult in Nigeria? Get a license is a problem. My name is Salami.
And it's good that that's coming from Salami. And I know that you never had any issue getting a license.
Not for me. I don't know what I mean.
All right, thank you. I don't like telling stories, but I guess I have to tell stories. Recently, I was in a forum, I think at FINA also, and I tried to explain this discussion around what I think to my best ability. Before, let's say mid-2000, what we had more were companies, technology companies, enabling banks. And that was the model that was working for everybody then. The banks were at the forefront. Technology companies were in the background. Nobody knows about technology now. The telcos were running all the communications for the banks, like the wide area network, the ATM network, the POS network, and things were running smoothly. What has changed is that these technology companies are saying, I want to be at the forefront. And now, if technology companies are saying, okay, I want to interface with the customer, I want to have the customer's deposit, I want to do exactly what the banks are doing, what other financial institutions are doing, for the sake of competitive market that we all talk about, good environment for everybody to play, would you be happy to be subjected to the same rules that govern that space? I think we need to start clarifying that within our mind. If this service can only be offered within these prudential guidelines or requirements, would you be happy to offer it that way? Perhaps with the benefit of technology. And shouldn't you even be able to do it better than technology? So, and that brings me back again to our own story in Nigeria. And something we've alluded to it somehow. I was also in another forum with colleagues in the bank, and I said, we've had our waves of fintech, or we call it fintech now, we've stamped it fintech. But that way, after the payment section 2020 was released, the first one was released in 2007, 2005, 2007, payments became the main thing. Had the cashless policy of 2012 to it, it's boomed. And then 3 years down the line, 2015, we started seeing add-ons. Credit started coming up. Crowdfunding. And whatever we are doing now, payments remain at the core, like Kennedy said. So if there is that need to ensure that that core is well protected to serve us well, I think it's just the right thing to do. Because if it fails at that point, any financial system, the moment that infrastructure goes down, nobody has trust in it again. So we have to bear that in mind at all times, that wherever we are playing within the value chain, it is essential that that core, which appears to be what many people are comfortable with when it comes to licensing now, because when you go to CBN and say fintech, and most likely by the time you discuss what do, you see payments somewhere there. Even those that do not start out as a payment company are coming back to say they want a payment license. Why? Because they want to start doing payments. Whereas there could have been partnerships and other forms of collaboration that could also assist you to get the same thing done. So when we're talking about licensing of payments, it's very essential to the fact that, I mean, based on the fact that that is the core, that is where we're all resting on. If it goes bad, you all look at CBN and think they are failed. And if you look at the discussion around how to approach, as somebody mentioned, approaching CBN, how difficult it is, and I think it was around the aspect of do I really need a license. We've had occasions where we've seen people come to us and we discuss with them and say, what exactly do you need a license for? Because what you are describing is a service to either a bank or to another technology, financial institution. I don't want to mention them, and I know some of them are in the room, where you actually don't really need a license. All you need to do is go to a bank or any other financial institution that requires your service and offer the service.
Some of the banks refuse to deal with you.
Sorry?
Some of the banks refuse to deal with you.
Okay.
Again, I'm not speaking for myself. You know what I'm talking about. But some banks will just not deal with you without some stamp from the CBN. Even if it's a no objection. What I'm saying, and sir, you know how much, we've had this conversation multiple times. We know how much work we have done to make this process better. But it can go way further. Because, for example, even just a simple stamp of no objection, which should be a simple online form. I go there, put in all my details, you have my BVN, you know my grandfather's burial ground, everything. And you give me a simple no objection, go ahead, I take that to the bank says, okay, I can deal with it. You go to a First Bank or you go to a Zenith Bank, there are Tier 1 banks or, I don't know if it's Tier 3 now. They will tell you, I can't deal with you, except CBN says I can deal with you. Even though all you are giving the bank is just technology, you're saying, route all the payments, route all the transactions through your network. They keep the deposit, just use my technology.
Yeah, just to manage our time. Let me just clear that. That's very simple even now. I mean, you raised the point. What's the FSI sandbox there for?
The sandbox doesn't really give life.
Hold on, you needed an API to perhaps test your solutions, your innovations. The FSI sandbox is there. There are several other sandboxes by banks. You can test, play, and when you are fine, and you're ready to go, either partner, or you come directly if you think you have what it takes. And the banks, and when you say that the banks, if you're going live with a payment solution, the banks will necessarily ask you for at least an AIP. If you're not going live on the solution, you're not going to the market, you're going to face customers. We need to protect them. If the customers get their fingers burned, I don't know when customers started knowing about switches. It took a long while before they realized that there was anything called a switch. They will look at their banks. So if a bank is demanding that you do the right thing, I think it's just fair. So there are options to be explored. Let us explore the option. Another thing we know from where we sit is that some like to have the AIP to bargain for license, for investment. That's not the essence of the AIP. It's not to go and get investors. If you're ready to go to get an AIP, you already have a mind of how you're going to get your investors. And it's unfortunate that you didn't hear feedback that certain investors are already confused as to what is going on because there's this AIP somebody is displaying, brandishing at them. So we need to be careful not to mess what we are building before we build it. And we are not saying everything is perfect. We are simply saying that we need to keep engaging and working it out. Let me move on to other issues. I think blockchain is for reactive approach. Right. I think, was it 2 years ago when the tier licensing framework was released? It was to address some of the concerns and discussions we're having in this room. But we've had a lot of stakeholder engagement on that just one piece of regulation that perhaps would have cleared up a lot. And a lot of pushbacks. You'll be surprised. Some fintechs will support, others will say, no, it shouldn't be this way. But you have to be, we bear in mind that we have a responsibility to ensure that we come up with something that will stand the test of time with respect to having a fintech license or not, and how to define some of the services. So we're beginning to look at it, okay, how are we going to, if you look at even the financial inclusion strategy, we're saying we're leaning more towards regulating the service you are providing as opposed to you as a person. So if you want me to tag you as a fintech and then start regulating you just as that name goes fintech, what would it entail? As opposed to looking at you from the service that you're offering and addressing you as such. So we'll continue to engage, and fintechs are not excluded from discussion. We don't see ourselves as knowing it all. We've talked about the issue, we had this discussion just before we came, blockchain. When we first had to do anything around blockchain, we called the industry and we opened it up to everybody, just come to the table and discuss with us. Today, when we see people come with solutions or innovation around blockchain, we listen, we speak, we discuss and engage them and see where we come in. We've had occasions where we say, okay, fine, to the extent that it has to do with payments, we are clear with it. But to the extent that you want to use it to do crowdfunding or you want to do lending, then someone else needs to look at it. So all is driven at ensuring that whatever we do, we ensure our financial system remains there. We don't want a situation where people get their fingers on. Requirements, who defines the requirement? I think I've addressed that. The requirements are clearly stated. Most of the time, before we issue a regulation of requirements, we've had engagement with the industry, including fintechs. We've issued out regulation and we say we want your feedback. Currently, so we're talking about open banking as to how it can help. We've had occasion to call on fintechs that we've seen in the industry. Come and talk to us about it. We don't deceive ourselves that we know everything. We engage a lot before we, and perhaps that contributes many times to how fast we get our regulation out, to which again we get flags for. People will bounce on us again, and it takes forever for CBN to bring out something, the regulation. Well, it's in the process of trying to get everybody, hear everybody out, and see what is best for the industry. I've thought about payments being at the core. We'll continue to see it from that perspective. Because if transactions, whether it's the one coming from the cryptocurrency exchange, who requires some transfers, whether that is even acceptable or not is not the question. Or you're talking of the mutual fund that requires you to make that contribution at a particular time, or you talk about the pension, retirement savings account and the pension managers who expect you to contribute whatever, or you're talking about lending, getting your collections and disbursement done. At the end of the day, if that infrastructure is sound and safe, we all play. So we'll continue to treat that with that kind of seriousness that we have attached to it. It's not going to be for everybody, but everybody can play. So long as you can define what you need. And I've said it, many people don't even need a license, but they will look for license. Then the usual story is, the bank says, I need a license. What have you asked? What did you say you're going to do? The banks will guide you properly if they understand what you're doing. Most of the time, what happens is, I'm providing technology. But because I've provided you technology for a year or two, I think I can scale. So I want to be on my own. And the bank says, okay, go and get your license. Not because the bank wants to spy you, but because the bank knows that he has some regulation to comply with, and which is for the good of everyone. So I would encourage us to continue to engage with us. Many times we've had to guide even those who apply, go about it this way, so as to, make it a smoother process. There are times where we tell you, okay, all you need is get a bank to support this, and we'll go with you. We can give you options when you engage us. We are not stereotyping the way we approve each item. Every service you bring, we'll look at it, the risk around it, we'll try to engage you in how to manage it. Where we think you cannot manage it all by yourself, we tell you the options you have. So please continue to engage us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On the shareholders, sorry, on the additional shareholders funds, and yeah.
Okay. You were very clear. You said a company that has a deficit or a negative SHF.
Yes.
Right. If you have a negative SHF, how can I deal?
No, I'm talking about flexibility in the sense that the investors want to feel that if they can show that look, they have the money because the money is being actually held outside the country. But of course, the funds now sitting in Nigeria before it's needed, there is some value lost there. So whether the CBN will be flexible enough to if the investors can show availability of the funds and also the fact that they are also willing to provide the funds when needed.
You're very right. We've had occasions where investors are putting money, normally a new company, running for a period, has eaten into the SHL. It's expected before you start making profits, your losses, I mean, you could sustain some losses in the initial effort. And they give us commitment that they are going to inject more capital and we allow it to go. But we need to see what has been done in the first instance. Not that I have a promise and I've never seen materialize in any instance before, and I'll keep to that commitment. No.
Yeah. Okay. So today is CBN's day. I'm lucky not to be a guy on the hot seat. But it's okay, even if I were, we'll deal with it. Right? First and foremost, just to make it clear, the SEC is a government institution. And everyone in this country is free to approach us. If you can't find somebody to introduce you, go to our website, you see a number, call us, and we'll invite you. Besides, when it comes to fintech, and we have a sandbox collection form, kind of, it's just an information collection form for everybody operating within this, space that wants to have an interaction with us, wants to have an engagement with us. And after filling that form, we've actually been able to speak to over 60 intending applicants. And we've interacted. I see some faces here that are my regular visitors, they're smiling, right? And we've been interacting to get things, properly done in the right perspective. Yes, some of the things we have done at the SEC, we are aware. One thing that we pride ourselves to have done at the SEC is to engage with the people, to engage with the market. And indeed, at the last conference, Fintech conference, we launched the Fintech Roadmap, which was a document prepared by every one of us in this place, in this house. We had the operators, the tech people, name it, just everybody, just come to the party. And we all crafted that document to kind of provide a direction as to where we want to go, or we should be going as a country, not even as SEC. Because if we do it as SEC, you guys will say, oh, we're not involved. We involved everybody. And that document, fantastic document, was prepared and launched. Even after that, we moved over to the next level, which was the blockchain and virtual financial assets, because we saw that that was not properly covered in that other report. And same thing, led by a son. And we came out, crafted the rule, okay, the stories around blockchain. Because what is blockchain really? All of this is just use of big language that will cause my grandmother problem. It's a ledger. Record keeping. That's what it is. Simple bookkeeping, a chukudu of those days. Right? You now put some stories around it and give you some concoctional names, and you can't start causing headache for people. That's what it is. So, one, to take your questions, first and foremost, the SEC has the responsibility under Section 13 of the ISA to register all exchanges, market operators, people operating within the capital market, as it were. Yes, the buzz about fintech mostly is around payment system, because everybody here has payment system. But I can tell you, in the main ecosystem itself, the issues around fintech has more to do in the capital market. And that's why when my friend was talking about robo-advisory, robo-advisory is investment services. And I defined something earlier. Let's take the function, let's take the product. What is the function? And if this function has a product that has to be registered in the market, it has to be registered in the market. So if you are collecting money from people, from the universe of people, that's public offering. That's public collection. You are not allowed to do that without a registration from the SEC. If you are saving money, that is deposit. That's central bank's business. Payment system is central bank business. But once you now decide to collect money from people, either as a way of investment or promising people that, look, if you do this investment, you are going to get a return. That is investment. That is investment. Section 13A of the ISA says that the SEC regulates investment and securities business in Nigeria. And if we do that by the law, any violation of the law requires a sanction. So clearly, we all must be educated. Education is continuous. Nobody knows everything. So we must find out. And that's why we have the Bawo and the Godalos and Co. ready to collect your money for some piece of advice. So meet them. And specifically, you cannot run an exchange, either a cryptocurrency exchange or whatever exchange in this country without our registration. In fact, there was just a recent case by Kenya, and defining what a cryptocurrency is as a security. Of course, the bedrock of our definition of cryptocurrencies is on the Irish case, for those that know it, in the US. So you must define cryptocurrency as either a security or what, a commodity. And we are fortunate enough in Nigeria that commodity regulation and securities regulation are under our purview. So either way, that's what you know what you need to do. There must be a definition and a clarity about what we need to do. So if you have investors or people who are interested in you doing business with them, please come to us. We will give you guidance. Regulations on crypto exchanges or digital asset exchanges are going to be out soon. The rule about securities regulation is called C for us. S-E-E, C. Simple, efficient, and effective. So regulation does not just come out because somebody wants the regulation. No, it must pass through tests. It must pass through a process. And that process, you are also involved. That's why when we issue regulations, we bring it out for exposure, we ask you to comment. What do you think? Do you think we are going wrong somewhere? Do you think there's something we don't know that you know? And once that happens, it comes back to us. We have a team which calls the Rules Committee. It's a team of the heads at the SEC. I am a member, I'm a high-ranking member there. And what we do there is we review every word, I and T, for a particular regulation. Sometimes the National Assembly helps us. We are going to get it passed in the year 2020. So, for your issue, I've given you my card. You can reach me. You don't need anybody to introduce you to us. No need. Just come. Bro, in terms of blockchain, right? It's simple. The recommendations in that document requires us to do what? To craft out rules. So that we set up a committee that produce something does not mean that is the rule. No. From it, we will not drag out the rules. You understand? The nature of the ISA, right from the people that crafted it, which is inclusive of the entire market itself. Organic team is there, he's part of it. They can't deny. Right? And all of that is to make sure that we cover enough grounds. So the ISA gives us that power to regulate exchanges, blockchain, commodities, and all of that. And a lot of things that people do when they collect money is called fund portfolio management using technology. If you collect money from people and say, look, if I collect this money, I'm going to do what with the money? I'm going to invest the money. And after investing the money, I'm going to give you money from the investment that I have done. It's fund portfolio management. But what are you doing with it? You can either do it via agric, hospitality, name it, just name it. You just can just go. But you see, even in the market, a lot of people are doing certain things that they know is wrong. You are going to raise capital, huge sums of money, and you don't want to come under regulation. It's wrong, totally wrong. Some people have actually come to us, please regulate this market. And the reason why it's important to regulate, so that you deal with charlatans. A lot of people are here. I know some people that have collected money from people, investors, or from citizens of this country, and have done away with the money. Last month, some guy that met me in one of the blockchain events in Abuja, in the process of that meeting, I met somebody who was in blockchain or who was in crypto exchanges and gave her 30 million naira. 30 million naira. That was last year. Somewhere about June, July. That's when that happened. As I speak today, the young man is having high blood pressure because that 30 million naira has gone with the wind. In fact, I had to involve the security agencies. This is what is happening. And there's so many people like that young men and women have collected money from that do not know anywhere to go to or complain about because these people are not regulated. Regulation is for all of us. It's for the safety of you, your reputation, yourself. And, of course, the investor that has deemed it necessary, that has faith in you, bringing in money. With innovation and technology, we can do a lot. We can do so much, but we must do it under regulation. Because the heart of man is desperately wicked. Who can know it all? We speak like this, but a lot of us are thinking of what next to do with that money and flying up to the next space or to go to Honolulu. So we need to deal with it. Thank you.
So, it's just
sorry, I think we've taken. Yes, please. That's what I'd say because we're now running out of time. I just want to say, thank you very much to everyone who has participated in the conversations. And before I pass the microphone to my colleague Issa to give the closing remarks, I'm just going to just to have some things at the back of our minds based on the conversations in the room. I think for the regulator, I think that what we've heard is please try and work on having one fintech desk, right? Because I heard you say, for instance, that somebody had come in to talk about lending in the payment section, and we were going to refer them to another department. And so I guess maybe from their perspective, there might be the conversation of, maybe I don't even know what I'm doing, maybe I don't get to speak, and so then you have the sandbox come in to then help. I guess the next question is really, how are we really regulatory sandbox? Maybe you hear, it was opened, there was one, 2017, 2019, blah, blah, blah. There isn't much activity. So I think there needs to be that, engagement at those particular, has to be a bit more in terms of that engagement. And so on this end, possibly, if that sandbox were, explored a bit more, maybe we'll get that kind of engagement that we're talking about. So maybe to find those ways to have that seamless way. Again, I think what we also had in the room a lot was end-to-end, in the sense of the full value chain. I start off doing something, then I want to do another thing, then I want to do another thing, and I want to do another. And it seems like I'm now with a bunch of licenses for every single thing that I'm trying to do. And I think from the regulator's perspective, we've also had in the room that, look, even though this fine nuance between providing technology and providing a service, what are you really? If you're really a technology company and all that you do is technology, right? We're not necessarily frowning at that. But if your technology does eventually end up in a service that now becomes a regulated service, right? There might be those issues where you're now providing that service and which from an investor's perspective, I then need to protect. I think the conversations in this room have been very, very helpful. And I think that for us as a firm, it's a starter. We don't want it to be something that, we just came and just talked about it. And we're hoping that there will be more conversations in this line. And so I'll say thank you very much, and Issa will then speak as well. Thank you very much.
I have not much to speak. For us as a firm, timing was key, and we have promised our guests both from the resource side and friends, that we're going to end this at 12, and we want to deliver on that so that we can all go and continue our business. You must admit that we've seen concerns raised about being able to engage the regulators. As a firm BNI, one of the value add we bring to our clients is what you've seen today, what we've been able to get. The kind of representatives at the regulators level that we can engage with, that we engage with on a regular basis, shows the kind of support framework we can provide and enroll some of you in terms of achieving your objectives. We speak with Mr. Gama almost every other day because God knows how many transactions we have before him. Our firm there's probably no firm that does as much capital market transaction in this country as much as Bawa and Igodalo. And when you take that further, in terms of working with the SEC, in terms of handling our clients, for some of the issues that we've seen at this table that people have raised, we actually think we can help you in driving some of those conversations. We have very good relationship with them. We can take some of those issues to them if it's something that we feel is necessary. Our firm has done almost the most of the complex and first-time transactions. We call them our first. There are certain transactions that have never been done in this market because there were even no regulatory framework for it. And we did those transactions. In fact, we've had to work with the SEC and the CBN a lot of time in then crafting regulations to then regulate those transactions after we've done the initial one. I have a whole list here, but I'm not going to go. We'll share it with you so that you can see that what we do in our firm is things that are complex. And from this table, we see that people are worried about some of these issues, but we think these are issues we can assist you in resolving. We can make it easy for you to actually achieve your objective in terms of being able to get the value that you want in your business. And please reach out to any of us. We'll provide our contact details. If you need help reaching out to Mr. Nomi in particular is very helpful. We have a lot of applications that we've had to engage with him to assist with. The AOO application is something that the PSSP license was something that we had to work with a lot in this firm. And it was due to his intervention, finally at the end, that have the process to eventually get resolved. So we're happy to provide support, and please reach out to us at any time and we can link you up with them if you're having challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.